Hello. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here today. I know that I'm going to be speaking in English, but I hope that's not going to be too much of a problem. And if I talk too fast, because I tend to do that, just raise your hand or throw something over at me. So, my name is Pixie Sartang. I'm from Citrus Agency. We're a new kind of content agency. We work with everything from insights and data and analytics through to strategies, campaigns and concepts, and all the way down to production. We're about 190 people. Our headquarters are based in Stockholm, but we're also in 8 different cities around the Nordics, including Malmö. We have an office here, so shout out to Citrus Malmö office. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking about creating a seamless brand experience with focusing on social media, because that is my speciality, both with strategy and with brand engagement. So, we've come a long way from our cave-dwelling hunter-gatherer ancestors, right? However, there is still a primal instinct lodged deep within our subconscious that affects the way we deal with communication and information. When we evolved to have strategic thinking and logic, we realized the importance of collective thinking, of everyone in our group buying into the same idea or being able to spread information easily. So we developed stories. Now, the first stories were very primitive. They just kind of said, you know, what we see. Well, there's a gazelle over there. There's a mountain over here, and there's a river here. But then they kind of evolved, because we'd started to look for patterns and try to understand why things were the way they were. So why does the sun rise every morning? Why does the moon replace the sun? Where did we come from? So we started developing stories around that. Stories were then hijacked by our leaders, by groups and organizations who were trying to either influence groups, maintain loyalty, or change public opinion. So in essence, those groups or those leaders were our very first kind of brands, using the power of storytelling. So, talking about brands, there was a time when products were just that. They were products. And the products were owned by those who either manufactured them or who harvest them and pick them, and everything was very local. But then came the Industrial Revolution and mass production and the need to sell to a much wider audience group. We needed to sell from city to city, country to country, and across the entire globe. And companies found it very hard to kind of compete with the local trusted produce. But they then realized that by having a visual cue, a visual identity, they could build familiarity through pattern buying and trust. So I see this symbol. I travel to another city, I see the symbol again, I trust it, I know that it works, I'm going to buy it. But then came competition. So there wasn't just one brand of soap, there wasn't just one brand of apple or banana or shampoo. There were many, and we had to compete. And that's when organizations started to build in personalities or some sort of experience into the brand so that they could divide up the market. And they understood the importance of having a personality that we could either identify with or that we wanted to be a part of, psychologically. So if I wanted to buy a packet of cigarettes, was it because I was a woman trying to stay lean and beautiful? Was it because I was a very manly man on my horse? I was a cowboy and I was rough? Or was I worried about my health? There was a cigarette for me. And a lot of that traditional thinking still remains today. We still put certain sets of characteristics or personalities into brands that we think people want to attain to, or that we can build a connection with people. And that's fine if all you're trying to do is kind of build awareness or to have this short-term loyalty. But what companies want today are fanboys, fangirls, brand loyalty, attachment, advocates. We want people to go on social media and talk about how amazing we are. We want people to queue outside for 3 weeks to get the new product that has 200 megabytes more memory That's what everybody wants. That's what every company wants, whether they admit it or not. They want loyal fans. And in order for that to happen, a lot has to go on psychologically. Everything from identifying a brand, knowing that the brand exists, and knowing that this brand sells this product or this brand offers this service, to actually experiencing the brand. And this can happen on multiple different touch points, from either in store or social media or an ad or a billboard, to integrating, so forming some sort of relationship with the brand. And that's not to say only the product, but the whole persona that the brand is trying to build. Through signifying, what does this say about me? So by wearing this brand of shoes, what does it say about me? Does it say that I'm cool, or is this, so over and I'm so embarrassed to be wearing them? That plays into a big part of consumer behavior. And then finally, connecting, and that is building a community around a brand and finding other people that you can kind of build the brand with. Now, the complicated thing is that this doesn't just happen in one touch point, in one channel, with one campaign, with one story, with one experience. There has to be a pattern of the same experience over a long period of time. And that's where the storytelling comes into it. Because the storytelling can build an experience. Now, what we tend to see is that you'll have a brand and it's very fragmented. You have different departments, different business units, different people in charge of different areas. And then one area will say, okay, we have a campaign, we have this message, we need to send it out on this channel to this audience. And then that's over. Okay, now we have this message that we need to send on this channel to this audience. And it becomes very fragmented. And there doesn't seem to be a unity even internally within the brand or the organization. And today's digital landscape is more complex than it's ever been. There isn't 1, 2, or 3 touch points here that your audience can relate to you with. There's millions, and you don't even own most of them. You can never own social media. You have to earn your place there. You can sign up to the page, but you can't force people to engage with you, and you certainly can't force people to follow you or share your content. We also have savvy consumers who know when they're being sold to. We have things like mobile technology, which is a very personal device. My phone is a very personal device, but brands are trying to infiltrate it. So things like ad blocking software, the use of it is up month on month on month. And the way that brands are responding to it is by inserting new technology into their websites or into their mobile sites that forces users to switch off their ad blocking software to get to that piece of content. So instead of stopping whatever is annoying your audience, you're trying to force them to change their habits or change what they're trying to bypass because it irritates them. And user experience is often becoming an afterthought. So in essence, brands are actually becoming more and more arrogant on the digital space and then wondering why it's not working. Now, what successful brands are doing is that they're identifying the need of having a core message or core messages built from inside out within the brand, pairing it with a strategic storyline, and thus allowing them to send out unfragmented messages, different messages, through different channels to different audiences. But there's a pattern there. There's an experience that we can relate to. So just like a story can have many, many characters, many events, and many dialogues, there's still a core story there that you can relate to. So just like Game of Thrones, one of the most complicated stories out there, you still know you're watching Game of Thrones. So this is not to say that you have to stick to one message. This is just know who your brand is, what it represents, what it believes in. And then you can build your messaging around that. Okay, so before I go into social media specifically, I can't be up here talking about the power of storytelling without actually telling you a story, right? So quick question. How many people here play chess? Oh, fair amount, good. How many of you think about chess at least once a year, maybe? Good, yes. Okay, so this is a little experiment. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then hopefully the next time you think about chess, or you see a chessboard, or someone says the word chess, a little flash of the story is going to come into your head. Okay? So there's a lot of speculation as to where chess originated. But there is one legend that has stood the test of time. Now, this legend is focused around a very old and a very wise Chinese emperor, thousands of years ago. Now, this man was so smart, he could outwit anybody in his court. But he was very frustrated because all the games at the time relied solely on luck. So he couldn't outsmart the people that he was playing because it was all based on dice or chance. So he got very frustrated because he wanted to show everyone just how smart he was. So he asked his court, he said, someone needs to come up with a game that involves my wit and strategy. And everyone kind of looked at him and went, oh, God. Okay. Went away. And a couple of days later, a very old and quiet man came to court and presented the emperor with the game of chess. Now, the emperor was blown away. He said, this is fantastic. With my knowledge of war, my knowledge of mathematics, I can outwit everyone. Delegates, ambassadors, everyone. I'm going to show the world just how smart I am, for I am the smartest man in the world. So he turned to the man and he said, what can I give you for this game? You know, I have wealth, I have riches, I have women, what do you want? And the old man said, actually, I would like some rice. So the emperor kind of laughed and went, okay, fine. And he asked his aides to bring in a bag of rice and an abacus to calculate. He said, so how much rice do you want? And the man said, well, you see that chessboard? I want you to put 1 grain of rice on the first square, and then 2 on the second, and then 4, and then 8, and then 16. Just keep doubling it until you reach the end of the squares. And the emperor laughed and said, okay, God. And he told his mathematician, okay, calculate, how many bags do we have to give him? The guy was there, going, okay, da, 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 da. And then he leaned over and he whispered to the king and he said, sir, we don't have enough rice in our entire kingdom to pay this man. And the king looked up and gave a little smile because he knew that he'd been outsmarted by the old man. So he looked up and said, off with your head. As all great leaders do, right? So that's the story next time you think about chess. Okay, so social media. In order for us to talk about social media, for me to talk about social media, we have to understand why people use it or what makes it so successful. And there are 3 things, really, that drive us as human beings that correlate directly to social media. One is emotion. We're very emotional beings. Even business decisions can be influenced with emotion over rational information. So we're very emotional creatures, even if we don't like to admit it. We also have a very clear sense of self. We're very aware of ourselves as individuals, but we're also very aware of ourselves within a group, our place within different groups, between different communities, our group with our family, our position in our group of friends, and so on. And lastly, ego. We are completely egocentric creatures. We love ourselves. In fact, one of the best questions you can ask someone is, so what do you think? Or how was your day? Right? Yes. So all of those things correlate directly to social media. Because ultimately, what social media does is reminds us that we're connected. We're connected to each other, and we're connected to larger groups outside. So our sense of self is reaffirmed through our own pages. We only post stuff that we want other people to think, we are. It's a digital representation of ourselves. We don't put things that embarrass ourselves on there. It's our perfect self. The idea of ego We love it when people like our posts. A lot of people will put something up there. If it doesn't get any engagement within a few hours or a few days, they'll take it right off, because that's embarrassing. And also the emotion side. This is human-to-human interaction. This is all based around emotion and conversation. So this whole idea of connectedness really shines through, and that's why social media is so addictive. Another reason why social media is so popular is because in real-life situations, we have to do this little dance called synchronized communication. And what that is it's when you and I are speaking face-to-face. When you're speaking, I have to not speak, and I have to listen, and I have to maintain eye contact and nod. And then I start speaking, and you have to be quiet. We have to read each other's body language, and, oh, did she just get annoyed? Or, oh, am I supposed to laugh there? And it's very stressful on our subconscious to have to deal with these kind of communications. But with social media, we now see unsynchronized communication. So that is, we lose all the stress of face-to-face interaction, and that's why people are so much braver on social media than they are in real life. A lot of people will say a lot of stuff anonymously online that they would never say in real life. And then we've got the emergence of the trolls and everything else. And that's all due to unsynchronized communication, because if you were to pull that person up in real life, they're far less likely to say those things to you. Now, because of unsynchronized communication, we've had to identify ways to reveal context. So things like emojis have gone up so that we can kind of see patterns in information, because we're very logical creatures and we need to understand context. Now, in order to have a completely seamless brand experience, we really need to have three things. One is strategy, two is a defined personality, and three is an understanding of the kind of content that we're putting out there. Now, in terms of strategy, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of different models of social media strategies out there. Even though social media has been around for a while, the idea of having a fully integrated strategy is still kind of new to a lot of organizations. We do have a lot of early adopters that have done really well, but it can be a struggle for brands to understand that a social strategy has to kind of feed in and understand all of your other brand strategies. So best case scenario is that you have a content strategy that looks into your brand strategy, communication strategy, sales strategy, and then condenses that into what kind of content are you putting out and what channels for what reason. But then when you look at the social media strategy, it's more than just the technical aspects of the platforms. So a lot of strategies, they just kind of say, okay, on Facebook, post this many times on these days and attach a photo or do a video twice a week or post 5 times a week. And that's not enough. That is not a strategy, because the reason for you being on there has to add value to the brand. So it's very important to understand your objectives. How does the social media play into your entire ecosystem, your whole digital ecosystem, or in fact, even in real life? To messaging, what kind of stories, what kind of messages are you putting out there? How does it add relevance to your organization? Your brand persona, which I'll go into in a second. Different target audiences, and also channel strategies, because you cannot act the same way on Facebook as you do on Twitter, as you do on LinkedIn. And that's more than just how often you post. That is down to what is the purpose of this channel, who am I talking to, and why. So why are themes so important? I often talk about the importance of themes within a social strategy. And that's because if you have a core, or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 even core themes that are anchored within your strategy, it allows you to be more agile and more creative with your storytelling. And then we have a pattern. Then it's not just fragmented random messages that make absolutely no sense. You can see that there is a reason the brand is on there, and there's a story that they're trying to tell. In terms of target audience, it's not enough to just use an organization's kind of umbrella target audiences for social media. It doesn't really work. So you can have a brand that says, okay, my target audiences are doctors or lawyers or men aged 18 to 30 who have a dog and live in a flat in a big city. But how do those people use social media? How do they consume content? What channels are they on? Or even worse, millennials, which is a huge group that everyone's trying to tap into, because I'm a millennial. My friends are all millennials. But I tell you what, we all use social media differently. We're on different channels. We like different types of content. So you shouldn't really put us all into this giant target group. So what you really need to do is take those target groups that you are using for either your sales funnel or any other target audience you might have identified, and then filter them through social media and discover, okay, what subgroups can we create based on behavior? So how do they behave on social media? Based on sentiment? How do they feel about the brand? And based on content consumption. What kind of content do they consume? What kind of content do they need from us? Y'all with me still? Okay. In terms of a persona, it's not enough to just kind of have your tone of voice as a persona. It's very important to kind of integrate your brand's vision, your overall tone of voice that we then adapt for different social channels, as well as a personality and language, because you cannot have a conversation with someone with just a tone of voice. And social media is about conversations. So if I'm having a conversation with you, it's not my tone of voice that's carrying on the conversation, it's my personality. So you have to have a very well-defined brand personality for social channels. Content. Content is king. Well, everything that you say, everything that you do on social media defines you. And everything you do on social media is content. So if you Google social content, you will get tons and tons of articles saying, make sure that you're talking to the right people, make sure that you're being relevant, make sure that you're adding value. And that's true. But what we're still seeing is this giant split in terms of marketing. So I'm a marketer. When I go home, I'll use social media to share really interesting things that I think people will want to see or read. I'll take pictures, really personal, cool pictures that I think people will like. I'll join conversations. I'll use hashtags that are relevant to me and to my friends. And I'll just share really interesting content that I think people will like. Because if I share something that I think is boring or dull or people won't like, then it reflects badly on me, right? But then in the morning, I put on my suit and I go to the office and I sit down as a social media person for a brand and I ask really weird, dull questions that have no relevance to anyone. I use it as some big promotional marketing tool. I use clickbait. Like, you won't believe what happens next, or click here to learn this, or da-da-da. And it's very arrogant, very broadcasty. Look what we did. We've won an award. We are doing this. We've invented this. We've done this, but with no context and no story. It's very cold, and it's super corporate. And then they're like, why are we not working on social media? Is that might work on your website, or that might work in a white paper, or that might work on a different channel, but not on social media. You have to understand the landscape that you're in. And the personality of a brand is so important that we're now starting to rank organizations based on empathy, based on how human that they are. And that's not to say that the ones over here who are not doing so well aren't active. These guys can be super active on social media. But that just means that they're being very broadcasty and not being very empathetic on the channels. So it's not based on activity. It's based on what you're saying and how you're saying it. And even though all the social media people keep saying the same thing, we still get content like this every single day that don't really say anything, don't really add to the brand. And I mean, you could have a post like this that has been sponsored, right? So they put money behind this. But what is the best case scenario? 100 comments that say up or down. Okay. Another thing is engagement. So here's just a quick example. Topshop in the UK, an article came out that said that they were underpaying their cleaners. So of course, what's the first thing that happens when negative press comes out? You don't call the press person at Topshop, do you? You go on their social media and you say, hey, what the hell? What are you doing? And Topshop had a very, very corporate, very formal answer that they posted to someone. And okay, fine, if that's the route you want to go, no problem. But then don't copy and paste it 28 times on the same page so that everyone sees it. And you just look weird. And that you don't care. right? And this is standard procedure for a lot of organizations. Another important thing is ads. You can see so many reports that ad spending on social media is going up and up and up and up year on year. Budgets are getting huge. But no one ever asks why. It's not the conversion rate. It's not that people love social media ads. Do you guys love ads when you go on Facebook and you want to talk to a friend? Or brands are not doing it well. But the reason that the budgets are going up so fast is that it's a very fast result. People are kind of saying, oh, social media is super important. Where have you been? You need to be on there. And the organizations don't want to go, oh, I don't want to spend 6 months cultivating a really great organic community on my Facebook. Look, here's 1,000 kroner. Just get us the numbers that we need. So then you get these peaks of really good engagement rates that don't actually mean anything. Because, okay, let's say I see a great ad, and I go on your page from that, but there's nothing there. It's a barren wasteland. Am I going to stay? Am I going to engage? You have to remember that if you want someone to engage with you, you're asking them to kind of give a piece of themselves to you, to kind of show their friends that they want to engage with you. And that's a big thing. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go a little bit quicker. So what's really important is, okay, when you do that social media content, make sure that it is super relevant, that it adds value, that it's engaging, but most importantly, it's on brand. Could you put that up on a billboard in the center of your city with your brand's logo and say, that is what we stand for. That is what we want to say. And so I have like 30 seconds. So I'm going to go through a very, very quick case study. I know that everything I say, a lot of people can say, that's super easy for B2C companies. You know, you're selling to a big mass of people or to teenagers, and they all love social media. So I just want to say a few quick words about GE, which have been described as the most exciting, boring brand on social media, because they're generally B2B. So they had a big issue at the time. Their shareholders were aging. Everyone thought they made light bulbs and refrigerators. No one thought that they were cool. And they wanted to attract brand new top talent. They wanted people who were going to apply to Google and Apple to apply to them. And the way they did that was not by kind of rebranding themselves entirely, but to look at the digital landscape and see how can they be most effective there. And they did that by tying everything around the idea of curiosity. Curiosity behind science, curiosity as to what could happen, and curiosity about people and their, impact on the world. On Twitter, they use 140 characters to really inform people, to kind of tell stories and really kind of get to understand what it is to be curious. Whenever they have a campaign, they make sure that they have people on site during that campaign to engage with you in real time. So they will sketch out a design that you might say, hey, I'd love to see this thing designed. In 10 minutes, you'll have a prototype sent back to you. That's how engaged and switched on they are. Instagram is all about visual storytelling. It's a visual storytelling board based around curiosity. What could you be curious about what they do? And you can say that, okay, they work with jet engines. That's really cool. But they have a lot of competitors and a lot of other companies that work with the same thing but haven't been able to tap into this. On Facebook, they moved away from a dull corporate Facebook page into something really interesting. They kind of bring people in and say, hey, stump our scientists. What do you want to see? What do you want to experiment with? We'll do it with you. We'll collaborate with you. We'll ride this curiosity wave. And they're super, super engaging. They don't only engage when there's a question being asked, they also monitor the conversations and engage with people when they're not even asked.
You can feel me hovering here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have one last word to just say goodbye? Or
I do. Just to sum it up, this is what GE believe in. This is what they say when they're being interviewed about their social media. And I think this is what's super important here. It starts by knowing who you are and what you stand for, because without that, you're all over the place. That is that core story, that core theme. Who are you as a brand? When you look at consumer-facing social media channels, focus on what people are interested in, not what you want to say, but what people want to hear. And then finally, you need to know how to add value to your community and design your tactics around that. And that's checkmate for me.
Thank you so much.